What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Time and Space podcast. I am Francis Donald. He is Jordan Hirsch. We are so excited to bring to you a conversation with Gunnar Schimoler, 2019 graduate of UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where he was a two-time captain and is now a professional lacrosse player. We'll hear about how Gunnar was born into a legacy of lacrosse and also about the loss of his father, uncle, and mother throughout his high school career.
What we loved about this conversation was bringing a really powerful story from someone who's incredibly emotionally resilient and someone who takes the mantra, "My team is my family," to really a new level. Welcome, everybody, to the Time and Space podcast. I'm Jordan Hirsch. That's Francis Donald, and we are thrilled to welcome our guest for the evening, Gunnar Schimoler. And he is here reporting live from Maryland.
Yeah.
And we are going to start off like we do in every episode with a fit check. So I'm going to throw it over to Francis to see what he's got going on today.
Yeah, I'm excited tonight. I've got and I'm going to have to sit up a little bit. My shirt says, "Be a good person." This is a brand out of Denver, Colorado, and they do branded apparel just about spreading this message. And so the slogan is something like the most basic human concept. Actually, it says it right here. The most basic concept, be a good person. So somebody that I definitely support. So I got that, and I've got this hat on, and I actually created this hat myself. So I found this patch at, I think, REI, and attempted to heat press it on to the hat, and it's actually not going very well, but we're going to find some super glue soon.
You fooled me. I thought that until you did this, I thought it was pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's decent. Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks.
Gunnar, tell us about what you're wearing this evening.
Under Armour hoodie. Support our troops. Got the American flag. Got some UMBC joggers. Go Retrievers.
There you go.
Nice. Yankees hat. Go Yanks. Go Giants. Big game this weekend. So rooting for them.
Yes. As am I. I don't think Francis is rooting for the Giants this weekend, but I certainly am.
I don't know if we established this, Gunnar, but I am born and raised in Dallas.
Oh God!
So we're gonna be, a couple times a year. We Jordan and I we're at odds in that regard. So, when Colt McCoy was starting, I'm also a Longhorn fan. Then I was a Giants fan for a couple of weeks there, but it sounds like Mr. Jones will be back at the helm this week.
Yeah.
So I am wearing, in honor of one of my favorite shows, a Dunder Mifflin Employee of the Month t-shirt. I wanted to honor The Office this week, as this is the last week it will be on Netflix. In the new year, I believe it is being taken off Netflix.
Really?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He's like, whoa.
I know.
Nobody told me.
That's my go-to.
I know. My wife actually told me that as I was getting dressed, so I felt good about this decision today. And I'm wearing a limited edition Israel Lacrosse hat from the 2016 European Championships. Wanted to support everybody in the Israel Lacrosse Foundation and Federation. They had their winter bubble just come to a close. I believe Cedrote won the bubble championship, and it looked like a really good time over there. So I wanted to give a little shout out to the Israeli guys. Let's talk a little bit about your lacrosse roots. So they start in Long Island, and that's where you were born. And tell us a little bit about some of your early memories with lacrosse.
Yeah, so it started with my grandfather. He played at Cornell, and he's in Lacrosse Hall of Fame, decorated defenseman back in the 60s. So then my dad was kind of born into it. He's from a family of 6, and him and his brother both ended up playing in college. So my dad went to St. Mary's in Long Island, and at the time they were kind of a powerhouse in Long Island. And he ended up going to Secuse. He was there 82 to 86. And he ended up being a part of the 1983 national championship team. So that was the first title Syracuse won. So
wow.
pretty big deal back then for that. And my Uncle Paul went to St. Mary's. He was high school teammates with Dave Petramala. So their team was pretty stacked too. And he ended up going on to Cornell 86 to 90. So he was in a great era with the Gates. He had a lot of good battles with them. So he ended up going to Cornell and had a decorated career, 4-time All-American, ended up going to play on Team USA, 1990, 1994. So growing up, the stick was always put in my hand. I was kind of forced into it, but I mean, I was born wanting to play lacrosse. So I didn't realize probably till I got a little older kind of what my bloodlines were. And I think the first time I kind of realized that I came from a really big and rich lacrosse family was going up to Lake Placid. I remember going in middle school, and we went to Lake Placid, and my dad was playing for the Burnt Orange, and my Uncle Paul was the Rusty Red. We were just in the parking lot. People were coming up to him. I was like, Dad, Uncle Paul, like, how do you know all these people? And that's when it kind of clicked, and I realized how small the lacrosse community is and how everyone knows each other, and how my dad and my Uncle Paul were kind of a big part of the 80s and 90s lacrosse culture.
Yeah, that's I'm so glad that you brought that up, because when Jordan first talked about you and that you were going to be coming on the show, that is immediately where my head went. We spent probably 7 or 8 years straight in Lake Placid, and for me, especially being a kid from Texas who had only dreamt about and seen a little bit of lacrosse on TV, to be playing lacrosse in New York and go up to Lake Placid and see those Burnt Orange teams, see those Rusty Red teams. And that's how I knew your Uncle Paul's name, because he was the goalie for Rusty Red and was killing it. It was like there was a buzz about those games at Lake Placid. And so that's immediately where my head went. So that's those are great moments for, certainly you and your family at the time, but for any lacrosse enthusiast to be up at Placid and witness those games.
So your family roots kind of start in Long Island, and then they spread to Syracuse with your dad, and then kind of over to Ithaca at Cornell with your grandfather and your uncle. And then after 9/11, your family moves to Annapolis. So you go from one lacrosse hotbed in Long Island to another one in Maryland. Tell all of us a little bit about that move, what that was like, your memories of it, and kind of just go through that with us for a little.
Yeah, it is pretty funny that we moved from kind of one hotbed to the other. All my family's still on Long Island for the most part. So remember growing up, we would still go back to Long Island all the time. But my dad's job brought us to Annapolis area. So I don't really remember that much of living in Long Island. I remember just going back for the holidays and summer and spending time there. But we moved into a super small town. We're called Mayo, Maryland. We're about 10 minutes outside of Annapolis. It's a small town, but it is a lacrosse town. It's a very blue collar lacrosse town. And where I ended up growing up and going to high school is a very blue collar town. So I love where I lived. I think it kind of shaped me into who I am and kind of shaped me to the lacrosse player I am. But the move is something that I think was the best case scenario. It's funny just thinking what my life would have been in Long Island. And I remember we were going to move back when I was in 8th grade, and I took the entrance exam to Chaminade, and we were about to pack up and go back to Chaminade. So it's funny thinking about kind of where my life would be if we would have stayed in Long Island. But I love it here in Maryland. I'm glad we made the move.
I heard that you, even though I'm sure you love living in Maryland, I heard that you still get pretty pumped up when you get that chicken cutlet sandwich from up in New York.
Yeah, when the bakers and the Long Island guys from Long Island would or from UMBC would bring the chicken cutlets, there was nothing better than that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the go-to? And I know crab cakes is a big thing. It's like you're not eating crab cakes every night, So what is? Was there a local cuisine that you got into that's better than like, the breakfast sandwich, the bagel, the pizza, the chicken cutlets? Like, what's your jam in Maryland?
I'll be honest, and any of my close loved ones and friends and family can attest, I am so addicted to Chipotle.
As you're going through your life, you're living in this awesome lacrosse town, and you're growing up.
Yeah.
And you get to high school. What was it like being a freshman at a lacrosse high school? So your first year of high school.
So funny enough, the head coach of South River when I was growing up was a guy named Paul Noon. And he actually lived right down the block from me growing up. So he always knew who I was. And in 8th grade, I remember he called the house phone and asked to talk to me. And it was a big deal. And my mom gave me the phone. And he asked if I want to be the team manager for that year. So here I am in 8th grade. I think these guys are gods to me, this varsity team. And so I was in 8th grade. I went to every practice, every game, rode the bus. So I got to do the workouts with them and warm up the goalie. So going into high school, I knew a lot of the guys. I knew what the program was like. So it wasn't a big jump. And my youth team was a lot of local guys, and we were good. So the high school coaches let us play, and sometimes in like the fall events with them, or they had off-season workouts as 8th graders. We went and did them. So there's a strong connection between the 8th grade athletes and then the varsity. So it wasn't a big jump going into high school, which was nice. I mean, it made the transition easy, and a lot of us made varsity as a freshman. And I think that had to do with us starting in 8th grade.
Do you think that was a strategic move by the coach? Did you see that happening year after year? Like seeing those kids that he really wanted to groom, bringing them in the 8th grade?
There was probably 10 of us that all played club lacrosse together or youth lacrosse together. And by the time we were seniors, we were all the starting lineup at the varsity team. So the coaches knew what they were doing back then. And I mean, it was cool for them to invite us and get us involved. And I mean, it was special. They may not have thought it was a big deal, but to us, it was a huge deal.
Yeah, I love hearing that progression and that integration, that inclusion by high school coaches really reaching down to the middle school and connecting that. And, we've had different conversations, particularly a couple of weeks ago with Tiffany Saran down in Texas, and talking about the growth of non-traditional, growth of lacrosse in non-traditional areas. And a lot of times what you find is that middle school players aren't really coached by the high school coach until they make the varsity team, right? Yeah. And it's not that intentional integration at an early age, but you're going through a town team, playing with your buddies that you go to school with, looking up to the high school team. Like, it's just such a refreshing idea that there's that natural progression for you.
Yeah.
And you hear all the time about, football towns, right? Football towns, like town shuts down on Friday night. Everybody goes to the football game. It's always so interesting to me to hear about lacrosse towns. There's lacrosse areas. Don't get me wrong. Maryland, Annapolis is a lacrosse area. Baltimore is a lacrosse area. Westchester in some way, Westchester County where I live and where your buddy Ryan Baker lives, is a lacrosse area. But to hear about lacrosse towns is just so cool to me. To have that Friday Night Lights feel in lacrosse, I think it's few and far between. So that it fires me up to think like, here's 8th grade Gunnar warming up the goalies, and then he walks into his first day of freshman year. It was a big deal. I think that's great. As your story goes on, there's some major tragedy in your life, and starting in your sophomore year. And if you could kind of deliver what happened going from your sophomore year all the way to your senior year, just so we could get your kind of perspective and all the facts right about some pretty significant loss that you had in high school.
Yeah. So I'll actually go back to 8th grade. So in 8th grade, here I am, a young kid, don't really think of loss or anything like that. And I remember coming home and my mom was really upset. And I didn't know why, and she wouldn't tell me. So 8th grade, my mom found a lump on her neck and goes and gets it checked out. And it turns out to be stage 4 lung cancer. They give her 3 months to live. I'm in 8th grade, it's 3 months to live. Probably took her a couple weeks to finally tell me. So here I am in 8th grade, and pretty much I get sat down and my mom and dad are like, Mom has a couple months to live. So I don't know what to think. I mean, you never, growing up, you look at your parents as like superheroes. You never think they're going to actually pass away. You never think that day's going to come. So here I am, 8th grade, not really knowing what's going to happen. But then things kind of went back to normal. I mean, my mom was going through chemo and radiation, but she never lost her hair. She never missed a day of work, never missed a day at the gym. She was never sick. Right. So things went on normal, and I never really understood how much she was going through. I didn't realize that most people, when they're going through chemo, can't really get out of bed. And here she was going to the gym every day, still going to work every day. And so I never realized how sick she was. So fast forward a couple of years, life was going on as normal. I mean, she was going through treatment, but it just kind of became every day to me and my sister. And it went on for a couple more years. And then it was August 2012. I had just finished my freshman year, going into my sophomore year. End of the summer, kind of getting ready to go back to school. And it was an odd day. Heidi and I, my sister, were never home at the same time. We were always running around, or she'd be at a friend's house, I'd be home, or vice versa. And it felt like it was the first time Heidi and I were both at home at the same time. And we pretty much got woken up in the morning, and my mom woke us up and said, I think something's wrong with Dad. So we run into the room, and we lost my father, and he had a heart attack in his sleep and kind of passed away. So that was a real first taste of loss. And I mean, here I am 15 years old, kind of not knowing what to do. And it didn't really sink in for a couple of years. And sometimes it really doesn't sink in, but here I am, my mom is sick, and here goes my dad. And, kind of got through that. And just when we were starting to get over that, my Uncle Paul kind of stepped into the father figure of my life. And he was living in Vermont at the time. He was actually coaching at Dartmouth, but regular phone calls, he was coming down to Annapolis as much as he could. And he wanted to plant a tree in honor of my dad. So here he is. My dad had just passed away a couple months ago. He wants to go plant this tree in our yard. And the whole time he's like, I feel off. My knees bother me. I don't feel right. So he goes back to Vermont, and we go up there for Christmas, have Christmas with him. And he falls asleep at the Christmas dinner table. And we're like, okay, something's wrong. And just like that, he got diagnosed with brain cancer. And within 2 months, he was gone. So here I am, 15 years old. I just lost my father. And then now I just lost my godfather and my uncle, who kind of stepped into my father figure role. So that was a really hard span for me. But, I'm young. I was still playing lacrosse. I was still kind of growing up and becoming a man. So it was tough to not have a father figure or kind of becoming the man of the house. Here I am being young and having to take care of my mom and my sister. It was a really hard time. And my mom was still sick at this point. So I was still going through this, but like I said, I never really knew how sick my mom was. So 2 more years go down the line, and life's kind of going on as normal. My mom's doing fine, and lacrosse was just starting. It was my senior year. I just committed to UMBC. It was like an awesome time, and I remember my mom was like, I can't remember this. And I was like, okay. I was like helping her with a couple things. And then it was like she was starting to drive and was forgetting where to get places. And I was like, Mom, we're just going to the store. And she'd forget. So then I started thinking, okay, something's wrong. So then slowly she started forgetting how to drive. And then she wasn't driving at all. And then she wasn't getting out of bed. And for the first time in 16 or 17 years, she missed my first lacrosse game. So it was the first game my senior year. She missed it. She couldn't come. And that's when I kind of knew things were getting bad. So I remember I came home from school one day, and one of my assistant coaches, who I've grown really close with, Greg Speed, Coach Speed is what I call him. Throughout all of this, he kind of stepped in as the father figure role to me after my dad, my Uncle Paul, passed away. He was driving me to practice, and he lived down the road. So he kind of stepped in as the father figure role, and he got close with my mom. So while all this was going on, I remember I was coming home from school one day, and he said, hey, can you stop by? And I said, yeah. So I drive to his house. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I walk in, and he's crying. I'm like, okay, something's up. So he pretty much tells me, hey, this is what's going on. You got to make a decision, and you got to call your sister. So I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we got to figure out where you're going to go and live, and kind of what the next step is. So I ultimately chose to live with him. So he, after everything, became my adopted father. But he came home and told me my mom's got 2 to 3 weeks, and that's it. So I remember kind of not knowing what to do, and I got on the phone crying and kind of called my sister. I was like, hey, I don't know how much you know, but you got to get home right now. And here she is, senior year of college. She's trying to graduate from Salisbury. And she had to kind of put her life on hold and come care for us. So I got home, and I remember going in my mom's room and kind of looking at her like, is this real? And she sat me down too, and kind of told me like, she's known that this has been going on. So, I guess earlier that summer, her lung cancer had spread to her brain. So the last kind of course of action was full brain radiation, and that was a path she didn't elect to go. So she kind of knew that this was coming. So she started getting the pieces into play, kind of figuring out where I was going to go and kind of getting things into order. So that 2 weeks, we started getting family coming to visit, and then Easter Sunday, I woke up, and her sister kind of woke me up Easter Sunday and said, hey, it happened. So kind of went in there with my sister, said our goodbyes. And within an hour, I had 12 to 20 of my teammates and best friends all at my door. They all came, they all supported me. And I didn't really know what to do. I went to practice the next day. I felt like that's something that she wanted me to do. So I kind of went on pretending everything was normal. So the next couple of weeks were kind of chaotic, and I didn't really have a chance to kind of soak in what kind of really happened. We were kind of in the midst of our season. We had playoffs around the corner. My senior day was coming up. So all these big life events were going on while all this happened. I couldn't stay at the house anymore. I had to go move in with my assistant coach at the time. And that was a big change for me. And but I had such a good group of guys, and, you know, we were playing lacrosse, and it kind of was an escape for me going out and still being able to play lacrosse with my best friends, and kind of kept my mind off of it. And we were going to team dinners every night, and people were bringing me meals, and I didn't really have time for it to soak in. And to be honest, after everything that's happened, there's times that I look back, and my dad passed away in 2012. I'm like, that was 8 years ago. And it's crazy. It feels like it was yesterday, and I still don't think I've had time to kind of process everything that's happened. But, you know, on the outside looking in, I think a lot of people are like, wow, he's been through so much. Like, how did he do all this? But for me and my sister, we kind of just kept going. And I feel like that's what my parents would have wanted. And my mom, like I said, she never complained once, never lost her hair, never missed a day. So it was like the only way for us to kind of give back to them was just to keep going. So yeah, it was, high school was kind of, it was like one thing after the other, but kind of looking back on it, as cliche as it is, you know, everything kind of has its rhyme or reason. So definitely a tough couple of years, but like I said, I had such a good group of people around me that they've kind of just never made me look back, and just surrounded me with love. And the family that I'm in now is great, and my sister and I are still super close. So I just can't thank the people enough around me for kind of helping my family get through those times.
Well, I want to, Gunnar, thank you first of all for, you know, courageously sharing that story, your experience. I don't want to call it a story. We appreciate that. But I also want to ask you a follow-up question. You know, good coaches will teach their players that when they experience adversity, that there should be some foundation, right, that they fall back on, right? When you encounter pressure on the field, like, what is your foundation? And, you know, that skill is usually that foundation. You know, when you went through these couple years in your life, like, what was your foundation? You know, what did you really have that was propping you up, holding you, allowing you to continue to play in that senior game and to finish your year, you know, as strong as possible? What was that?
I think the biggest thing through my life was my mom, kind of seeing how she handled the loss of her husband and her soulmate, and then of her going through, I mean, they gave her 3 months to live in 8th grade. She made it 5 years. And like I said, never lost her hair, never complained, never missed a day of work. So it was like, wow, how am I going to feel sorry for myself, or if I want to skip a practice because I'm upset, or because my back hurts, or we lost a game? Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, those are little things. Like, here's someone fighting for their life, and they don't want any help. She didn't even want people to know she was sick, because she didn't want people to feel bad for her. So it was remarkable to see someone fighting for their life, not asking for any help. So it kind of instilled that in my sister and I, that whatever we're going through in the grand schemes, whether it's on the lacrosse field or in school or in a relationship or social life, it's a small thing. So then after she passed away, it was kind of just living on her spirit and her legacy. I was at practice the next day. That's what she would have wanted me to do. She wanted us to live life how we were. And she told us that from the start, when things started going bad, that she wanted us to not skip a beat, and just kind of carry on her legacy. So going and playing lacrosse, those last couple of weeks of high school, it was in her honor. And like I said, my friend group and the core people of that South River team, they were with me since I was this tall. We were best friends growing up. So they were with me through everything. So getting out and playing lacrosse with my best friends to carry on my mom's legacy was best case scenario. It was the best timing where I had an opportunity to go kind of let off steam and go to practice and laugh and smile. And that was almost the best timing for it to happen, is being in lacrosse season and having a chance to go out and compete and kind of carry on her legacy as well as my father's.
I want to echo what you're saying, and I hear you loud and clear. In a 2015 article that was, about your experiences in life, you said, "My team is my family," and I want to share a little bit about me, and not to one up at all, but to empathize. May 4th, 2013, I lost my mom. And to, battle with breast cancer. And she passed away in the morning. I got the call. I was coaching lacrosse at Nazareth, in the office preparing for our conference championship game against Ithaca College, and went to the hospital, ran to her room to try to catch her, at her last moment. Unfortunately missed that last moment, walked out of the hospital that morning, drove back to Nazareth, walked onto the field to coach in our championship game, which we, miraculously came back and won that game. So when you say, I played lacrosse the next day, I totally feel you, and that the idea that my team is my family, I totally feel you. It was like, and I had family there. I had an uncle there. I had an aunt there that are in the hospital. And I looked at them as we're standing and saying our goodbyes. And I said, I have to go. And I couldn't have driven faster back to that field, and to be a part of that. So I hear you.
Describe what that was like to go from, living in your own house to now living with your coach, who you were obviously close with, but maybe not ever living living status. And now this is a brand new situation for you. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I was living there from April. So my mom passed away April 5th. So April 5th, 2015 till me graduating college, that was my home. And it did take a while for that house to feel like a home. At first you kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells, just being at someone else's house. It's not your home. You want to make sure you clean up after yourself, and you kind of feel awkward doing stuff or having people over. So it definitely took a while to get comfortable with that house. But right after my dad died, Coach Speed was taking me to Caps games or to dinner, or we were going out and working out together or shooting. So kind of right after my dad passed away, he became my father figure, and he was very involved in my life and very involved with kind of helping me become who I was when I was a senior. So the transition to moving in with him went awesome. It still took a little time to feel comfortable and having my own room there and going back and calling that home. But he had just had a son when I was there, so it was great to kind of have a little brother and experience a little guy running around. And he's my number one fan. So that was awesome to have a little brother again, and have someone wearing my jerseys or coming to my games. And they were great to me. The Speeds came to every single one of my college games. He ran all the bull roast and did all the tailgates at UMBC. So they were super involved with my whole life for the last 5 years, and I still live down the street from them. We do Sunday dinners. I talk to him on a daily basis. Garrett, my little brother's playing hockey now. He's always sending me videos and pictures of him playing hockey, and he's wearing 21, my number. So It was the best case scenario. It was, he made the process and everything go so smoothly, and I can't thank Amy and Speed enough for kind of taking me in. They see me as their son, and that holds a special place in me. And they made that process in the last 5 years as easy as it could be.
Absolutely. How important is chosen family, that idea? When I think about Jordan and his family, and, I was an adult when I lost my mom, but they still took me in, and so when I talk about chosen family, this is the guy. For you, these were still like very important, developmental years for you. So, did you feel yourself actively choosing, who you really brought into your circle, who you really brought in close?
Yeah. What's special about this town and kind of my friend group and my life is, I've had the same friend group and the same best friends since I've been 5-6 years old. Since we moved into Annapolis, I hung out with the same guys. I still hang out with the same guys. So at an early age, I got to know their families. They got to know me. So when everything happened in high school, they were with it. They were there with it and with me. So they kind of went through the struggle with me, and they knew exactly what I went through. So my kind of inner circle has been the same since I've been a little kid. So that holds a very special place in my heart, knowing that the guys that I hang out with now have been through it all. I mean, they went through everything with me. They were the guys who were at my doorstep an hour after my mom passed away. So they were the guys at my dad's funeral that stayed to the very end. So it is hard having people I meet now kind of learn about my situation. And there is times where I run into awkward situations when someone will be like, well, where are your parents now or something? And so it is challenging at times, kind of meeting new people. But like I said, I've been hanging out with the same group of guys since I've been a little kid. So their family's my family. I still go to Thanksgivings with their family, or I go to Christmas with people's families, and the whole community kind of sees me as their family, and that's why I love living here.
It's really just inspirational stuff. Out of tragedy, hearing how people are taking care of you as their own, and your gratitude towards them, it's just inspirational stuff.
I want to ask a question, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but I want to go back to your dad and your uncle. How do you connect to them? What is that? Is there a moment? Is there a process? Is it the game? Where do you find yourself really connecting to them?
A couple different things. Both of them were super into the Grateful Dead. So music's a big thing. I think I was kind of brainwashed when I was younger. My dad got like Sirius XM, and they have a Grateful Dead channel. So driving to games, the Grateful Dead was playing all the time. And I hated it. But now I listen to it now. My dad had a tattoo on his ankle that had the Grateful Dead bear holding a lacrosse stick with 1983, the year they won the championship, on his ankle. And when I got in college, I got it on my thigh. So I had the Grateful Dead tattoo with my parents' initials and my Uncle Paul's initials. So the Grateful Dead is a big thing. Whenever I hear them, I always think of them. And then lacrosse, it's the relationships that I've built that bring me closer to them. Like, so many times I've been playing lacrosse or at a tournament or coaching, and some random guy will walk up to me and be like, hey, I played with your dad. He was a great guy. Or, hey, I was on the world team with your uncle. He was a great guy. Or now with YouTube popping up, there's been so many old clips of my Uncle Paul and my dad playing, watching YouTube. I would sit in class and watch those games. And I get to watch my parents or my uncle and my dad play. And that brought me a lot closer to them. And I would say just the biggest thing is hearing the story secondhand and meeting all the people that they had played with. And, they could have played with someone in high school and those people still see them as their best friend and they still care about my uncle and my dad and they still care about me. So it's really special going to a tournament and I run into two people that my dad played with or my uncle played with and just seeing them and them genuinely caring about me and telling stories. And that's what the game's all about. So without lacrosse, I think I would have kind of lost some of their memories, but every month, every tournament, I'm hearing new stories about them. So I think that's refreshing and that helps kind of carry on their legacy and their spirit.
Well, I want to share to that point. I want to share something with you, and I won't name him, but this is coming from a former Syracuse lacrosse goalie who's a good friend of mine and Jordan, and talking about your dad and your uncle. So John was an unbelievably nice guy, and Paul was a terrific guy as well. Paul was the best goalie I've ever seen live. And this is coming from another Cuse legend who's won a national championship. Says roomed with Paul on the camp circuit a few times when I was in college. A very kind, fun, and gracious person. So I just wanted to. I'm sure you've heard that before, but just in the very short time that I've interacted with you, it makes sense that you are the person that you are. It seems like you had amazing influences. When we talk about be a good person, right? That's it comes from somewhere, and it seems like you've been surrounded by great people your whole life. How do you connect to your mom? Where do you feel that most?
Honestly, whenever I'm doing something tough, whether it's when I was at UMBC on the end line or the Monday mile, is that's when I think of her. Whenever I have to do something tough that kind of gets me out of my comfort zone, and I just think back to, I'm 21 years old in college running a Monday mile. I had to run 6 minutes and that's it. And then I'm done. It's like, it's not that bad. And there were so many times that I would share stories about her to the team, or whenever we thought something was going wrong, just think of her and think of what she went through. And I still all the time think of her. And, it's very humbling thinking whatever I think is going on is very trivial compared to what she was going through. So there's not a day that goes by that I don't admire her courage and, aspire to be her.
Gunnar nailed it. When we talked on the phone the other day, he was saying, my story is really 2 stories. So we're going to get into part 2 now.
Nice.
Which is perfect. So you graduate high school and you're off to UMBC.
Yep.
And you go to UMBC to play for a legendary coach, Coach Zim. And you're an attackman at this point. You're playing attack. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to do some foreshadowing here, but I'm not going to give it away. He doesn't end up as an attackman. I'll leave it at that.
No.
So tell us a little bit about your first kind of UMBC experience.
Well, so it goes back to another one of my coaches at South River. Was this guy, Steve Merle. He was like a UMBC legend. He held the single season points record before Lyle Thompson broke it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Held the single season assist record until last year when Grant Met broke it. So this decorated UMBC legend, someone I'm really close to, and he went to South River and coached at South River. So he kind of got my foot into the door at South River. At UMBC. So he got me in touch with Zim. He kind of helped me through the recruiting process. So, here I am. I come off a pretty good senior season. I was playing that little attack in midfield. First team All County. I made All Metro. Made like the All Maryland team. So I'm kind of riding the high horse going into UMBC. I show up at UMBC. My locker is smack in between the two starting attackmen. Kind of from day one, I kind of in my head, I'm like, okay, like this is gonna be kind of my spot. We go through the fall, and I don't have a great fall, and then I get injured. The whole fall I was kind of battling injury, and then I found out I had a sports hernia, and ended up having to get surgery and miss 3 months. So here I am coming into UMBC thinking like I'm going to be the next great UMBC guy. And I didn't even really get a freshman year. So that was a hard pill to swallow. I didn't really know if I wanted to stay at UMBC after that.
What was it that changed your mind?
When I went there for Coach Zim, from the first recruiting visit, me and Coach Zim hit it off. He was the coach at Hopkins when my dad was at Syracuse. He knew my family. My mom was there when we first met Coach Zim, and she really liked him. And me and Coach Zim were really close, and it was really hard when he ended up, stepping away. I got hurt, and I wasn't loving school as much as I thought I would. And, I got back to being healthy, but I wasn't playing that much. And it was hard. I mean, I think anyone going from being a top guy at a high school and then going into a college team, it's a rude awakening. And I struggled with that for a little. And, some of my other buddies were having success and, having a really fun time. And I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I didn't want to play lacrosse anymore, but I stuck with it. And, it's the best choice I ever made.
Talk to us about that moment a little bit more, because that realization, right? Being a top guy from a South River high school program and going into college and really having to like work and wait, right, for your opportunity, whether it's because you had great leadership above you or it's because you were injured or whatever it may be, how does that, tell us how that, not messes with your mind, but tell us how you have to work through that mental struggle, right? I mean, that's a struggle when you talk about your identity being wrapped up in, part of it, at least, the success of your lacrosse career.
Yeah. Well, I think freshman year is the hardest mentally with lacrosse. Here you are, you're going to college. I mean, in your head, you're like the social life of college and all this other stuff. And, I think social media nowadays, so many people are painting this picture of life's awesome. This is great. College is great. And, here I am. I have to be up at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning because we have practice. And I see on social media, my high school buddies are out at a frat party, and, it's hard. You have to realize, like, my college experience is going to be a whole lot different than some of my other buddies. And I think that takes a toll on you. And you have to really think to yourself, do I want to commit to lacrosse, or do I want to go have the time of my life? But I think once you kind of realize that lacrosse is going to teach you so many things, and there's nothing else I would have wanted to do than wake up at 6 a.m. and be with my team and compete and grind with my team. And it takes a couple weeks or a couple semesters for it to click that you're so privileged to still get to play the sport you love. And the guys who didn't end up playing college, who went to the party schools and in the frats, like, they're probably missing lacrosse, and you don't see that side of them. So I think it took a while for me to kind of realize that I was committed to lacrosse. I loved waking up at 6 a.m. and going to work out and going to run and competing and being with the guys. And it's not for everyone. Just because you were good in high school doesn't really mean you're going to play in college. Like, you still have to put in the work. Whatever you were doing in high school isn't enough in college. So it took a while, and I think it takes every freshman a while to kind of figure out what works for them and how to balance school and lifts and study hall and practice. And it's not for everyone, but everyone's different. Something's going to click where they're like, this is for me. And if it's not, that's why you see so many people transfer or leave. But it is hard. But I mean, you have to figure it out for yourself.
It's all true.
Yeah.
It's all true. And, I love the fact that you brought up that it is a privilege to be able to participate and be a part of a team.
I want to give you a chance to really prop up your alma mater right now. UMBC Division I college lacrosse program has storied players, probably just before you got there, several years before you got there, guys like Brendan Mundorf come to thought. Drew Westervelt.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Drew Westervelt. Exactly. Lives in the shadow a little bit of other schools, right? It lives in the shadow of Hopkins. Can live in the shadow of La Jolla at time, or La Jolla. I'm in San Diego, of Loyola. But at the same time, we've seen UMBC have great seasons, beat Hopkins, beat these teams, like really compete. But I think, and I'm going to be very honest, I think there are a lot of people that either don't recognize UMBC as the program that it is, or may turn their nose to it because it's not, one of those other programs in Baltimore. So tell us a little bit about the program, the culture of the team, that really made it a place that you wanted to be, and make it a place that you're proud of being from or being a part of as a retriever.
Yeah. Well, I going back on those older guys, in the lacrosse offices, there's an Inside Lacrosse frame cover, and it says UMBC MLL Factory. So I don't know if we still have that nickname. We did once. But yeah, the guys like, Pete Polon had a great MLL career. He was at UMBC. Terry Kimmener, Drew Westervelt, Brendan Mundorf. So there was a time where UMBC was a top 10 program, and they were pumping out All-Americans and All-World players and Team USA guys. And it did dip down a little bit, but I mean, there was plenty of guys that still could play. There's another South River guy who graduated 4 years before I got to UMBC, Matt Gregoire. He was an All-American, led the nation in goals his senior year. Another guy, Nate Lunas, played on the Bayhawks for a while. He scored 10 goals against Blaze Reardon against Albany when I was a freshman. So it wasn't a lack of talent. We had guys who could play. It was just we lost a lot of tight games. And when I was at UMBC, we never had a real winning record. But my sophomore year, we had the number 1 defense in the country statistically. My junior year, we had a top 10 defense statistically. Same with my senior year. And we were doing this with guys who, we didn't have Under Armour All-Americans. We had a hard-nosed, blue-collared guys. And we were playing these top teams and we were hanging in them. And to have a number 1 defense and all the other statistics, like we could play. And even now, Coach Moran's gotten there and he's changed the program so much. And they're on a uphill. Wrong word. They're on a
upward trajectory.
Yeah, upward trajectory. And I think they were like 4-1 or 5-1 when the season got canceled because of COVID.
Right.
I think they would have ended the season 10-1 and been a top 10 team. And I think they have the chance to do that again this year. And, when I was a senior, we had our whole starting defense, get hurt, and we still finished a top 10 defense. And I think that just shows that the type of commitment the coaches have to the team. And, mark my words, I think UMBC is going to be a top 10 team for years to come with Coach Moran at the helm.
Go in as an attackman.
Yep.
Your sophomore year, you get moved to midfield.
Yep.
At some point, somewhere you get moved to defensive midfield, D-mid, right?
Yep. Junior year. Yep.
So your junior year. So now, and I know that people will say that's only 2 positions. I'm calling I'm calling a bluff on that. That's 3 positions in 3 years.
Yeah.
So you got basically 2 to go, and you do the full cycle.
Yeah.
You do end up becoming a defenseman your senior year.
Yep.
Now, to set the stage for this, because I think this is just the craziest thing I've ever heard of in Division I lacrosse. And please correct me if I'm wrong. All 3 defensemen on your team leading up to the start of your season have season-ending injuries. Is that correct?
Yep.
So all 3 starters.
Unreal.
I've never heard of anything like this before.
Yeah.
And what do? They say, yeah, Gunnar will do it. Right?
I wasn't the top choice. So
tell us what was the conversation like? Like what how'd that go? What did your coach say to you?
Yeah.
So,
was there money involved? Like how did
Yeah.
what was
I wish.
Should we call NCAA?
So kind of backtrack to sophomore year. So I ended up, Moran comes in with his new staff. And I ended up seeing the field a good amount. And I had success my sophomore year. Going to junior year, was doing really well, running first line midfield. We played Navy. We lost a close game to Navy. I think I had like 1 or 2 goals. We played Mount St. Mary's, and we lose to Mount St. Mary's for the first time in our program's history. And we got destroyed. And we're like watching the film, and we couldn't clear the ball. We could not clear. So the next day, Moran comes up to me and says, hey, you may not like this, but we want to move you to defensive midfield. We need help clearing the ball. So I was like, okay. So from then on, I started playing defense, and the goalie would make a save. I would run right to the crease, catch the ball, and just sprint. And that was my job. I was just punt return, and that was kind of my job, and I loved it.
Wow.
So that all the rest of junior year, we do that. And then leading up to senior year, I'm still doing that. I'm playing D-mid. I really enjoy it. I really like it. And then we're getting all these injuries, and we scrimmaged Georgetown. So it was right before the season started. We were supposed to play Georgetown and Princeton. So Georgetown, our kind of last starting defenseman, breaks his foot. So we're kind of scrambling.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of these college teams like Syracuse and some of the bigger, they have 60, 70 guys on the team. We had like 42, maybe 35 healthy. So we had a small team. So we really didn't have anyone. And, our defensive coach was Coach K. He's at Hopkins now. Him and I were like this. That was my guy. And I was super close with him. And our defenseman goes down. And I remember kind of walking in his office like, now what? And he kind of like was jokingly like, well, you may have to pick up a pole. And I was like, yeah, I would love to. Let's do it. And he kind of like looked at me, was like, no. And I was like, no, like, let's try it. And I remember he was like, no. And we walked down and went to lift, and we were lifting, and he comes up to me after lift, and he's like, you know what? Bring a pole tomorrow to practice. And I was like, okay. So next day at practice, walk to the equipment room. I'm like, hey, I need a pole. They grab me a pole. I put a random head on it and go out to practice. And I think I practiced like twice, and then we had a scrimmage Princeton. So I kind of get thrown into it, and like the first dodge is like Michael Sowers, and he's dodging and steps away, assist. I'm like, oh God. And the game kind of went on. It kind of grew on me. And, Coach K put a lot of time in with me. I mean, 7 a.m. I was waking up every single morning. 7:15 we had film. Before and after practice, we were doing footwork stuff. And the first game was at Navy. And it was my first game at close defense. And they're like, we're going to bump you up. You're going to guard Grayson Terrain. And like at the time, here's Grayson Terrain. He was like a second team preseason All-American midfielder. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So we go, and I played really well. I had like 8 ground balls and 4 caused turnovers. I was like, this is awesome. I was like, I wish I would have played this my whole life. So I kind of never put the pole down after that. And we did really well, and we ended up making that run. And, I became our top cover guy for a little bit. So it wasn't anything I ever expected. I never, ever in a billion years thought I would play defense. But, now I wish I would have started playing when I was a little kid.
Well, first of all, shout out Michael Sowers from last week. He was on he was on the podcast last week, and so it's great to hear that you got your first opportunity to match up against him, right?
Yeah.
I want to go back, and you talked about this transition between attack and defensive midfield, and you're like, all right, let's do it. Like, come on, really? Like, that transition to playing defense at the Division I level. I mean, that's not easy with a short stick.
No.
I
think it's the hardest position.
Yeah, absolutely. At that time, were you spending a lot of, here's the question. How much of it were you able to do? We talked to Michael last week about, are you the guy, the attackman that's getting in the hole on a turnover? Are you willing to do that? How much of that is you just like, understanding the game, knowing the game, playing D-Midi, and how much of it was like really relying on your coaches, your team to walk you through that transition?
Yeah, I think it has to go back with kind of like the public school thing. I wasn't a flashy attackman. I couldn't go left and right hand. I didn't really have to in public school. Like I could go left-handed, but I wasn't splitting guys and sticking it left-handed. And when I got to college, I realized, like, what? I'm not going to be a Twarton attackman. So then, I got away with it a little more at midfield, and I was the guy who I was the last one off the field. So if we turn it over, I was getting back in the hole, and if I got stuck, and then I would sub off. And I fit the bill. I was 6'3", 210 pounds. I was fast. I was strong.
Wow.
So I went and I went and played, and I didn't know what I was doing. Coach K put me in spots that I could kind of hide a little bit. I would sometimes go and guard the crease attackman, and I would just kind of lock him off, and they wouldn't really slide around me. And then as soon as the goalie made a save, I'd run and go get the ball. So I think the first couple of games, I kind of just hid. We played a lot of zone too. I kind of just sat in the middle, and then the more and more I started playing, the more I was able to talk and kind of tell people where to go. And that was the biggest thing going from, midfield to D-mid to close defense. It wasn't really so much being able to play. It was all the mental stuff that goes into defense at the Division I level, like getting into slides and knowing who's hot and what defense we're going to do. And if he goes this way, what are we going to do? And that took the longest part. I could kind of make plays because I was athletic and I could run with guys, but learning how to play defense and learning how to communicate was the hardest thing by far.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about going to a 6-foot pole. You're talking about angles. You're talking about stick presentation, backpedaling. I mean, there is so much that goes into setting yourself up for success with a 6-foot pole. I mean, those sessions in that film must have been crucial for you to gain that confidence.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this on the record. I think Coach K is the best college lacrosse coach. I think he's going to change Hopkins into a top 5 defense and get kind of them back on track. Can
we say his whole name? So everybody knows.
Yeah, Jamison Custer.
Jamison Custer. Yep. If you hear that name and you think Johns Hopkins, you're correct, because that's where he played. And, he actually made that trade. He played both pole and short stick in college too, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he was facing off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so Coach K,
he kind of inspired it a little bit.
A Syracuse product, I believe.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. I mean, again, it comes back to coaches looking out for guys that they trust, looking out for guys that they know are looking to do the right thing. It certainly helps to be 6'3" and 200 plus pounds for sure. But ultimately, I think for coaches, it comes down to who you trust. And they trusted you to make that last positional change before the goalie went down, and you had to do that, I guess.
I know.
To go through so many kind of ups and downs as a team in your 4 years, what did it mean to you and the other seniors to win that conference championship?
There were so many tears and, hugs and smiles when that final, I can't even describe it, when that final horn hit. We were so close so many times, and we knew if we got there, we were going to do it. And we had such a great group of seniors. We were such a tight-knit group. The whole team was such a tight-knit group. And, that whole season was so up and down. I mean, we got kicked out of our locker room midway through the season. We were changing in the bleachers for about 4 weeks. But we, in the back of our minds, we knew, if we get in, we're gonna do it. So, I can't even put into words how happy we were when we won. That was just such a special moment to share with such a special group of guys.
And on a personal level, you were able to have that feeling and that sensation of being a champion in your birthplace.
Yeah.
So that had to be so special for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I had some family come to the first Stony Brook game, and we got destroyed, and they came to the Hartford game, and we had won, and I was like, I think we're going to end up playing in Long Island. So I had all my family was there in the stands, and, here we are, thought we were out, thought my season was over. Everyone was at my senior day, like, oh, good career. And now everyone gets to go to Long Island, and we won. So that was really special. And, I would always say a prayer for my parents and my uncle before every game. And, I would always look for a sign. And those 2 games in Long Island, I could feel that they were there, and it meant the world to me.
Is faith, is your faith something that anchors you? Is that really important to you?
Yeah, I would say I'm a very spiritual guy. Almost, I used to be a little more spiritual. I've kind of toned it back a little, but I look for signs, and I'm a big believer in signs, and that everything happens for a reason. And it'll be, I'll say a prayer before the anthem, and then I'll see 3 birds fly over, and I'll think, okay, that's my mom, my Uncle Paul, and my dad. And it's just little things like that. That's kind of like my routine. I would say a prayer before every single game, the same prayer. And I always felt connected there. And that's something I still do. Even if I go and play a pickup game, before I step on the field, I say a little prayer and I play. And that's something I think I'll always do.
We've talked about routines in the past, and the distilling your routine into something that you can really control, right? Because every game is a different scenario. So it sounds like you're certainly anchored in that. A question that I wanted to ask you here for a few minutes is, you went to UMBC. Your dad played at Syracuse. Your uncle played at Cornell. Your grandfather played at Cornell. Is that right? Or did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I know you grew up, formidable years in Maryland. Did you ever want to go back to New York for college? Was that a part of your process at all? Or were you happy to spend those 4 years in college closer to home?
I wanted to go to Syracuse. I mean, growing up, I wore a Syracuse orange helmet. My whole room was Syracuse posters. Everything I wore was Syracuse orange. And I had the chance. The big thing about Syracuse is your firstborn son will go there. They guarantee your firstborn son can go to Syracuse. So, Coach Simmons was a part of my life after my dad. I would speak to him, and they let me know if I wanted to go. The 21 jersey was there for me. But when it came time to choose schools, my mom was still sick, and I didn't want to go far away from her. So it came down to Navy and UMBC. And I ultimately picked UMBC. But yeah, I definitely 110% wanted to go to Cuse. That was like my childhood dream. But, it worked out going to UMBC. And at the time, I couldn't go far away. So it kind of narrowed my choices to the Maryland schools.
Yeah. That's a real, whether your reason was staying home close to your mother or whatever it may be, those are real scenarios that a lot of players encounter, right? There's always that, that pull, and there's that reality. So, but it sounds like they needed you. UMBC needed you, right? In those 4 years to step up in what sounded like some very turbulent moments for that program.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think so.
Go from being a freshman attackman at UMBC to now a MLL level defenseman, which is something you hear all the time. Obviously.
Said nobody ever.
Said nobody. So I have a couple questions. Can you tell us a little bit about the MLL bubble, what that experience was like?
It honestly was like summer camp. It was awesome. Growing up in Annapolis, there was a ton of Annapolis kids that I grew up knowing and playing with that were there. My best friend growing up and my high school teammate was on the Bayhawks. A couple other friends were on the Philly team. It was like summer camp. It was like summer camp with beer. And, we didn't have really practice or anything like that. It was just like a game a day, pretty much. We had like a training camp, which was like 2 practices, but then your games were at like 7:00 at night. Sometimes you'd have the day off. So, everyone had their own hotel room. Every meal was provided. It was great food. They had like a Bud Light zone for us. So you would play your game, and then you would go hang out with all your friends, and we couldn't leave the hotel. It was like right outside of the Naval Academy, and we'd hang out in each other's rooms and hang out in the Bud Light zone, and just be kids and not really have to worry about work or the outside world. And then you'd go and play a game of lacrosse for an hour, and you'd come back, and it was like that for 10 days. And I had a blast, and as much as I hate COVID and I hope it ends, I would love to go back and do that again. That was a blast.
Do you ever say to your coaches now, like and you played for the Connecticut team, correct?
Yep.
So did you ever say to those coaches, hey, listen, if something goes down and you need another offensive player, like I'm the guy?
Well, funny enough, I got drafted. So before MLL, I got drafted in the NLL to the Georgia Swarm. I had never played box lacrosse in my life. So I show up to training camp in Toronto, Six Nations, Ontario, actually. And
nice.
Lyle Thompson's on the team. Randy Statz, Shane Jackson, Zed Williams,
Wow.
Jordan McIntosh, all these
The
guys.
same team?
Loaded.
Yeah, and Miles
What?
Thompson's on the
Loaded.
team. So I show up, and I've never played box lacrosse before. They have me as like a transition guy, which is like almost offense. And I show up there, and I'm like, yeah, I could maybe play a little offense soon. And then I watch 2 minutes into practice, I watch Lyle Thompson and like Randy Statz play, and I'm like, yeah, coach, I'm defense. I can't do this transition thing. And I learned very soon that I was not going to be a NLL, transition star. But when I went to training camp for the MLL, or when I went to the bubble, I brought my short stick. I thought I was going to play D-midi. And I show up the first day, and coach is kind of like going through matchups and stuff. And he's like, all right, Schimoler, you got John Grant Jr. And I was like,
Whoa.
okay. So then I, put down the short stick in practice and picked up the long pole, and I played the whole, 10 days at long pole. But I didn't even know that I was going to be playing long pole. I was, the whole time leading up to it, I was practicing short stick thinking I was going to play D-mid. And then I show up and they're like, did you bring your pole? And I was like, I got one. And then I ended up playing defense.
So his first matchup in college is Michael Sowers, and his first matchup as a pro is John Grant Jr. A high school state champion, a college conference champion, and a professional lacrosse player. Could you give us a short summary, a quick ending note? Your life in lacrosse is what?
I would say my life is lacrosse. All my relationships, for the most part, are formed around lacrosse. My girlfriend played lacrosse in Florida. She plays in the girls pro league. I got my current job through a lacrosse connection. Everything in my house is lacrosse sticks, lacrosse posters. I'm still coaching lacrosse. In my free time, I play lacrosse. I would say my life is centered and based around lacrosse.
This week's snake in the draft, our man Sean Tandy, segment Sean, is not with us. He has the night off. He's on the IR. He's on the shelf. We gave him some time to recover. So we will have to try this without him. It will be tough to do, but we're going to do the best we can, and we're still going to have our snake in the draft. Today's snake in the draft is the Baltimore starter pack.
Ooh.
So what are the essentials to be a Baltimorean?
I think you have to say Baltimore. Baltimore.
It's funny that you say that. I was considering putting that as an option. So our
The
options,
accent.
our 9 options today are as follows: Old Bay, the Inner Harbor, the Baltimore Ravens, Natty Bow. We know our buddy from Baltimore would go with that probably off the jump. That would be my guess.
He has a tattoo, a Natty Bow tattoo.
Under Armour,
Okay.
the Orioles,
Also known as the O's.
the O's, the Caps. So we're going to see what those season tickets really mean to you.
Yeah.
Fed Hill,
Good spot.
and Crabs.
Not the team.
Not the team, the kind you eat. So I did do a little bit of research on this. I did some reconnaissance, if you will. I was texting with my 2 Baltimore consultants that I coached at Lynchburg, 2 of my favorite Baltimore people. So I would like to thank Josh Davey and Chase Lotz for their services today in helping me create this list.
I thought you were going to say Mike Mundorf.
Yeah, I could have called Mikey too. So the way the snake draft is going to work, our guest, obviously Gunnar, will choose first. I will be the sandwich man tonight. I'll go second. Francis will get the next 2 picks. It'll come back to me. And then Gunnar will get his next 2, which would be his last, and we'll snake it back to finish it off. How it always ends up, and this is something that we've actually never addressed with Sean, someone always doesn't actually pick their last pick. You just get stuck with it. But it's always been fun to kind of just get stuck with something at the end.
Yeah.
So Gunnar, your first pick in the draft of the Baltimore starter pack.
I'm going to go with Fed Hill.
Wow. You said that with a smirk.
Statement. What a statement.
If you're from Baltimore or went to school in Baltimore, yeah, Fed Hill is a fun time.
That's a spot.
Okay.
Referring to Federal Hill, for those of you who don't know, which is a part of the city where fun things happen, after 9 p.m. 10
Good
p.m.
restaurants. Good restaurants. My pick is going to be... Oh, man, this is tough. I'm going to say Inner Harbor, and I think that's kind of a touristy thing to say. I think. The reason I have to say it, though, when we were in college, our freshman year, we were in the national championship, the Division III national championship. Go Flyers. We had the time of our lives that weekend in the Inner Harbor. It will always give me good memories, so I'm going with that for number 1.
Shout out to the power plant.
Big shout out to power plant. Yeah.
Am I up?
You got 2.
I'm going Natty Bow. I'm gonna go with the Bowman. Always a great marker as you're on the highway driving past downtown. There's 2 things that you look for, I think, that I look for, and that's M&T Bank Stadium, and it's the Bowman on top of the building there. Other than that, I'm gonna take Under Armour. And I say that as a Lululemon guy. I'll still take Under Armour.
Say that's controversial.
There's nothing better than sipping a Natty Bow and wearing, moisture wicking apparel. So
you always frame your draft. Like you always frame it. Like you're the catcher that like the ball's outside and you bring it back in to try and make sure that everyone. I'm going to choose Old Bay. It's a brilliant seasoning. It's brilliant. I think it's amazing. We have it in our house. As a New Yorker, I appreciate Old Bay. So that's what I'm going with.
Fair enough.
2 for you, Gunnar.
I get 2.
Get 2.
I will do the Ravens. As much as that hurts me, go Giants. I have grown to like the Ravens just a little bit. I like watching Lamar Jackson play. So I'll do Ravens and Crabs.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I will say, too, what I like about the Ravens is they have like a college football vibe in how their fandom works. And I've been trying to figure it out. Here's why I think that. A lot of people walk to the games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that is uncommon in professional sports in the United States. My one experience with soccer overseas, we walked to the game from the place I was staying, and it was like thousands of people walking to the game. And it like, you're cheering as you walk to the game. And I feel like the Ravens have that vibe. So I appreciate that.
You also have to wear snow camo pants to the game.
Yeah.
Black, white, and gray camo. All day.
So we're left with the Orioles and the Capitals. I don't like either team. I think I'm gonna go with the Caps because I like the Yankees more than the Orioles, and I don't, I like the Rangers obviously, but I don't know that there's like a huge hockey rivalry with them. I don't think. Is that true or false? I don't.
I
Even know.
don't know. Well, I'm a
do you
Western
have-
Conference guy, so
Yeah. Do you have any insight on that, Gunnar? Is that a rivalry, the Rangers and the Caps, or not really?
Yeah, we saw them a couple times in the playoffs. That's always a good game. I would say the Caps' biggest rival would be the Penguins, but I would say Rangers are up there. It's a good game to go to. Those tickets are expensive.
But the Yankees are a bigger rival with the Orioles, right?
See, I don't know. The
You don't think
Yankees
so?
have always been so much better than the O's. Like, at least the Caps and the Rangers were both good.
True. All right, I'm changing my pick. Orioles.
I wanted the O's.
Whatever is less, and because people say that the O's, like I'll take that. I like that. That's
Let's
cool.
Let's go O's, hon.
So Francis, you're left with the Washington Capitals. How do you feel?
I feel a little cheated. Maybe not cheated, but I feel like I really had a connection with the O's. I was really excited to take them, and I didn't get that opportunity. But life goes on. Life goes on.
You didn't get the
Still happy to
opportunity.
be here. Still happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to post this draft. I'm excited to post this draft, especially for the real Baltimoreans that can give us some more insight onto these things and maybe tell us something that you would have put in on the list that we didn't have. Gunnar, we can't thank you enough for spending this time with us. It's been awesome having this conversation with you, and we are so grateful to you for sharing your experiences with us and with all the people that listen.
Yeah, well, I can't thank you guys enough for giving me the platform to kind of share my story. And I think what you guys are doing for the game is awesome. And, growing the game and hearing all the stories that the game has is something that needs to be done a little more. So thank you guys enough. And I really enjoyed it. And again, thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, Gunnar. It's a pleasure getting to know you, my friend.